"You were never supposed to wake up," he whispered, staring at me like I was a glitch in his perfect plan. I didn't flinch. I just leaned closer and said, "Then you should have finished the job. 3 weeks ago, I was poisoned by my business partner. Today, I'm back, with evidence, rage, and nothing left to lose." My name is Jordan Hale, and this isn't just a story, it's a warning. A tale of betrayal so deep, it came from the one person I built my future with. If you love suspenseful, emotionally charged stories that keep you hooked till the last second, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us bring more powerful narratives that expose the darkest truths and the strength it takes to fight back. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. I met Tyler Quinn in the fall of 2012 during our first week at Stanford's graduate business program. He walked into the lecture hall like he owned the place, confident, sharp, and already dressed like a CEO. I was the quiet one, the coder, the guy who preferred spreadsheets over spotlights. But Tyler, he was magnetic. Within days, we were paired for a startup pitch competition. I handled the back-end tech. He dazzled the judges with his charm. We didn't win, but we clicked. Over late-night coffee and whiteboard scribbles, we built the foundation of what would become Hale & Quinn Ventures. By 2015, we had launched our first product, an AI-powered home security system that learned user behavior and adapted in real time. Investors loved it. Within 2 years, we had offices in San Francisco, New York, and Austin. Tyler became the face of the company, doing interviews and TED Talks. I stayed behind the scenes, building the tech, managing the teams. We were unstoppable. Our valuation crossed $80 million. Forbes called us the future of smart security. But behind the glossy headlines, cracks were forming. Cracks I was too loyal, too blind to see. Tyler started changing after our Series B funding. He stopped looping me into meetings. Passwords changed. Files disappeared. He'd whisper with investors behind closed doors. I brushed it off. Stress, maybe. Pressure. But then I found a hidden folder on our shared drive. Shell companies, offshore transfers, and a pitch deck for a new startup. My name wasn't on it. I confronted him. He laughed. "You're the face," he said. "I'm the engine. You'll get your cut." But I knew then I was being erased. I tried to stay calm. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe he was planning something and hadn't told me yet. But the signs kept piling up. He started avoiding me, canceling meetings last minute, delegating everything to junior staff. I was being pushed out of my own company, slowly and silently. And then came the final blow. One night, Tyler called me. "I need a favor," he said. "Big one." He claimed he was being blackmailed, said he needed to move $250,000 just for a week. "I'll pay it back," he promised. "You know I will." I hesitated, but he was my best friend, my brother in business. I transferred the money. That was the last time I saw him. The next morning, his apartment was empty. His phone, disconnected. Our servers, wiped clean. I checked the bank. The money was gone. Then came the email. No subject, no sender name. Just one line. "You should have died with her." My fiancée Maya had died in a car crash 2 years ago. Tyler was the one who held me together back then. He'd moved into my apartment for a month, cooked for me, made sure I didn't spiral. Now I wondered, had that been comfort or surveillance? I sat in my office, staring at the screen, heart pounding. Everything I'd built, everything I'd trusted, was unraveling. And the man I thought was my closest ally had just declared war. The morning after Tyler's call, I woke up to silence. His apartment was dark, untouched, and eerily quiet. The blinds were drawn, the fridge was empty, and the bed looked like it hadn't been slept in. I knocked on the neighbor's door. No one had seen him. I called his number. Disconnected. I checked our shared calendar. All meetings had been canceled. It was like he'd vanished overnight, leaving behind only shadows and questions. I rushed to our office. The receptionist looked confused when I asked about Tyler. "He said he was taking a personal leave," she mumbled. I logged into our server. Entire folders were gone. Passwords had been changed. Our financial dashboard showed irregular activity. I opened our joint account. The $250,000 I had transferred was gone. Not moved. Vanished. Wired to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. I stared at the screen, my pulse racing. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe he was in trouble. Maybe he'd explain everything. But then came the email. No subject. no sender. Just one line. You should have died with her. My breath caught. My fiancée Maya had died in a car crash 2 years ago. Tyler had been the one to console me, to help me survive the grief. He'd moved in for a month, made sure I ate, slept, didn't spiral. Now I wondered, was that comfort or control? I called our investors. No one had heard from Tyler. I checked flight records. Nothing. I hired a private investigator. He traced a rental car to a cabin near the Grand Canyon. I didn't tell anyone. I packed a bag, drove 12 hours straight, and arrived just after sunset. The air was thin, the silence heavy. I knocked on the cabin door. Tyler opened it like he'd been expecting me. You came alone, he said, smiling. Good. Inside, the cabin looked like a movie set. Too perfect. Too clean. A fire crackled in the hearth. 2 whiskey glasses sat on the table. Tyler poured me a drink like we were old friends catching up. I didn't touch it. He talked casually about stress, betrayal, how investors were vultures. I listened, trying to read between the lines. Then he leaned in and said, You were always the weak link, Jordan. You just didn't know it. I stood up, fists clenched. Where's the money? I asked. He smiled. Gone. Like Maya. That name hit me like a punch. I lunged, but he was faster. Something sharp jabbed into my neck. I staggered back, vision blurring. The last thing I saw was Tyler walking out the door, whistling. I woke up to pain. Not the kind that throbs or stings, but the kind that screams. My ribs felt shattered. My throat was dry as sandpaper, and my vision was a blur of red and dust. I was lying in a ravine, half covered in dirt and rocks, with no memory of how I got there. The last thing I remembered was Tyler's smirk, the sting in my neck, and the sound of him walking away. Now I was alone. Abandoned, left to die. The sun was brutal. It baked the canyon walls and scorched my skin. I tried to move, but every inch of my body protested. My legs were useless. My left arm was numb. I had no phone, no water, no food. Just silence, and the distant echo of betrayal. I screamed, but my voice cracked. I cried, but no one heard. Hours passed. Maybe days. I lost track of time. I hallucinated Maya's voice calling me. I saw Tyler's face in the rocks. I begged for help, cursed the sky, and prayed to a god I hadn't spoken to in years. But I didn't die. Somewhere deep inside me, something refused to give up. I dragged myself forward, inch by inch, breath by breath. My fingernails tore, my knees bled. But I kept crawling. I followed the sound of wind, the faint scent of pine, the hope that someone, somewhere, might find me. And then, just as my body was about to quit, I saw a shadow, a figure, a hiker. He dropped his backpack and ran toward me. His voice was panicked, his hands trembling. He called for help. Minutes later, I was in a helicopter, then a hospital, then a coma. The hospital ceiling was white, too white. It felt sterile, hollow, like a blank canvas that refused to give me answers. I woke up to machines beeping, tubes in my arms, and a nurse whispering, "He's awake." My body was broken, but my mind was intact. I remembered everything. Tyler's face, his words, the sting in my neck, the ravine, the crawl, the hiker. Every frame of that nightmare played in my head like a film I couldn't pause. Doctors said I'd been in a coma for 2 weeks. They called it a miracle. Said the neurotoxin should have killed me. But I wasn't interested in miracles. I was interested in justice. I couldn't speak properly. My throat was raw. My muscles refused to obey. But I blinked once for yes, twice for no. And when the nurse asked if I remembered what happened, I blinked once, then again, and again. Rehab was brutal. I had to relearn how to walk, how to speak, how to hold a pen. Every step felt like punishment. Every breath reminded me of betrayal. But I didn't quit. I couldn't. Tyler thought he'd buried me, thought he'd erased me. But I was still here, and I was going to make sure he paid for every second of silence he forced on me. I hired a digital forensics expert. Quietly, discreetly. We traced the shell companies to Tyler, found emails, voice, memos, even a recorded call where he said, "Jordan's out," permanently. I built a case, piece by piece. I didn't want him to know I was alive until it was too late. I watched interviews he gave during my coma. He spoke about grief, about losing a friend, about carrying on the legacy of Hale and Quinn. He cried on camera. Investors praised his resilience. The media called him a visionary. And I watched it all from a hospital bed, my jaw clenched, my fists trembling. He was building an empire on my grave, but I wasn't dead. Not yet. The first time I stood without support, my legs buckled. The therapist caught me before I hit the floor. "You're rebuilding," she said. "Not returning." Her words stuck with me. I wasn't trying to go back to who I was. I was becoming someone new. Someone Tyler hadn't planned for. Someone he wouldn't see coming. Every day in rehab was war. My body resisted. My nerves screamed. But my mind sharpened. I studied Tyler's moves like a chessboard. I replayed every conversation, every email, every glance. I remembered the way he'd looked at Maya's funeral. Too composed, too rehearsed. I started wondering if her death had been more than an accident. I requested the crash report. It said brake failure, but Maya's car had just come from servicing. I dug deeper, found out Tyler had paid for that service. My stomach turned. I hired a digital forensics expert named Lila. She was ex-FBI, brilliant, and ruthless. We worked in secret. She traced the shell companies to Tyler, found emails, voice memos, even a recorded call where he said, "Jordan's out permanently." We uncovered offshore accounts, fake invoices, and a trail of stolen IP. Tyler hadn't just betrayed me, he'd built an empire on my back. I stayed quiet. No social media, no press. I let the world think I was recovering slowly. Meanwhile, I was building a case, piece by piece. I created a timeline, collected evidence, and documented everything. I even found a hidden camera in my car, installed months before the poisoning. It had captured audio, Tyler's voice, his plan, his arrogance. I watched interviews he gave during my coma. He spoke about grief, about losing a friend, about carrying on the legacy of Hale and Quinn. He cried on camera. Investors praised his resilience. The media called him a visionary. And I watched it all from a quiet apartment in Seattle. My jaw clenched. My fists trembling. He was building a monument on my grave. But I wasn't buried. I was rising. The investor summit was held at a luxury hotel in downtown San Francisco. The ballroom shimmered with chandeliers, velvet curtains, and the scent of polished ambition. Tyler was scheduled to speak at 7 p.m., the keynote slot. I arrived at 6:45, dressed in a charcoal suit, clean-shaven, and silent. No one recognized me. That was the plan. I took a seat in the front row. The lights dimmed. Tyler walked on stage, smiling like a man who'd conquered the world. He wore a tailored navy suit, his hair slicked back, his voice smooth. "We're not just building tech," he said. "We're building trust." I almost laughed. The irony was suffocating. He froze when our eyes met. For a moment, his voice faltered. He blinked, swallowed, then continued. But the rhythm was broken. His charm cracked. He rushed through the slides, skipped key points, and ended early. Applause was polite. Confused. He stepped off stage and walked straight toward me. "You were never supposed to wake up," he whispered, his voice trembling. "Then you should have finished the job," I replied, his face drained of color. He looked around, panicked. I handed him a folder. Inside were copies of the evidence, emails, recordings, financial trails. "You built your empire on a corpse," I said. "But I'm still breathing." That night, I met with the FBI. I gave them everything. They'd already been investigating Tyler for fraud, but my evidence turned the case nuclear. Offshore accounts, poison procurement, shell companies, attempted murder. It was all there. The next morning, Tyler's office was raided. His assets frozen, his name dragged through headlines. Tech CEO under federal investigation. Whistleblower. Returns from coma. The silent partner speaks, but I wasn't. Done. I wanted him to feel what I felt, to lose what I lost, to watch everything he built collapse brick by stolen brick. Tyler's arrest made headlines within hours. Tech CEO accused of attempted murder. Whistleblower returns from coma with evidence. Hale and Quinn implodes. The media devoured the story. Investors panicked. Stockholders fled. His empire, built on charm and deception, began to crumble fast. I watched it unfold from a quiet cafe in Seattle, sipping black coffee, my hands steady for the first time in months. Tyler was dragged from his penthouse in handcuffs. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted. He kept his head down, but the world had already seen his face. The visionary was now a villain. The trial began 3 months later. The courtroom was packed. Journalists, tech insiders, former employees. Tyler sat at the defense table, pale and hollow. His lawyers tried to paint him as a man under pressure, a genius who cracked. But the evidence was overwhelming. Offshore accounts, poison procurement, shell companies, the hidden camera footage, the voice recordings, my medical reports. The jury didn't flinch. I took the stand. My voice was calm, deliberate. I told them everything. How we met, what we built, how he betrayed me, how he left me to die. I described the ravine, the crawl, the coma. I watched the jurors' eyes widen. I saw Tyler shrink in his seat. He didn't look at me once. The prosecution played the audio clip. Tyler's voice. "Jordan's out. Permanently." The room went silent. That line echoed like a death sentence. After 3 weeks of testimony, the verdict came in. Guilty on all counts. Attempted murder, wire fraud, grand larceny, identity theft. He was sentenced to 30 years in federal prison. No parole for the first 20. Tyler cried, sobbed, said he panicked, said he didn't mean it. But no one believed him. Not anymore. I walked out of the courtroom into the sunlight. No applause, no celebration. Just quiet. The kind that comes after a storm. I didn't feel victorious. I felt free. 6 months after the trial, I received a letter. Handwritten. No return address. Just my name on the envelope. I opened it slowly, already knowing who it was from. Tyler's handwriting was shaky, uneven. 5 pages of apologies, justifications, and envy. He wrote about our college days, our startup nights, our rise. He said he hated me for being loved more. Said he envied my peace, my independence. Said he never meant to kill me, just scare me into disappearing. He begged for forgiveness. Asked me to visit him. Said he was a broken man. I didn't respond. Some wounds don't need closure. They need distance. I moved to Seattle. Bought a loft overlooking the water. Started mentoring young entrepreneurs, teaching them how to spot red flags, how to protect their ideas, how to trust wisely. I launched a podcast called The Silent Partner. It went viral. People wanted to hear how I survived, how I rebuilt, how I turned betrayal into power. I spoke at conferences, wrote articles, became the voice for those who'd been silenced. Survivors, whistleblowers, fighters. My story wasn't just mine anymore. It belonged to anyone who'd ever been stabbed, in the back by someone they loved. One rainy afternoon, I got a knock on my door. It was Tyler's younger brother. He looked nervous, holding a small box. "He asked me to give you this," he said. Inside was a photo of the 3 of us, me, Tyler, and Maya, taken at a beach years ago. I stared at it for a long time. Then I closed the box and handed it back. "Some chapters don't need sequels," I said. That night, I sat at my desk staring at the city lights. My phone buzzed. A message from a stranger. "Your story saved me." I smiled. Not because I'd won, but because I'd survived. Because revenge isn't about rage. It's about reclaiming your power.